She accidentally replied, "I miss you," to the CEO, and he walked to her desk and whispered, "Say it again." She was the kind of woman no one noticed. Quiet, careful, always professional. He was the man no one approached, powerful, untouchable, and known for never crossing the line. But one message, just one wrong message, changed everything. What began as an accident turned into the most whispered story in the company, and suddenly, the girl who always stayed invisible was the center of a secret no one was supposed to see. Because when power meets vulnerability, the rules don't bend, they break. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. Oh no. Lena Hart's whisper cracked in the silence of the office, a single thread of panic among the clatter of keyboards and quiet hum of machines. Her finger froze above the mouse as the message blinked back at her like a spotlight. Message sent to Damian Rhodes. Text, "I miss you." Not to her best friend Abby, like she meant. Not in the group chat reserved for harmless venting and late afternoon memes. To Damian Rhodes, the CEO. The man who didn't flinch when firing 3 departments last year. The man who never smiled, even when the stock prices doubled. She blinked again, tried to swallow, but every breath hitched somewhere between her ribs and her pride. A chair scraped in the boardroom, her blood turned cold. Then, footsteps, not hurried, not hesitant, measured, solid, calm. The entire floor started to quiet, every head subtly turned, every screen lost its audience. And Lena could feel it, the shift, like the air had thickened around her. A tall shadow spilled across her desk, her heart pounded in her throat, and before she could even look up, before she could form a single excuse, he spoke, low, calm, close enough to steal the air from her lungs. Say it again. 10 minutes earlier, she'd been stirring honey into her tea. The chipped porcelain teacup sat warm in her hand, her quiet ritual, her anchor. It had belonged to her mother, who always said a good cup of tea could fix a bad day faster than any apology. It was the one thing Lena brought to work that didn't belong in a corporate office. And somehow, that made it matter even more. Her desk was tucked away in the back left corner of the open floor, safe, invisible, just how she liked it. But now, every eye in the building was on her. Damian Rhodes was still standing there, still watching her. She didn't dare move. Her hand hovered over her mouse, desperate to delete the message, to pretend it never happened, but it was too late. He spoke again, quieter this time. "Who did you mean to send that to?" Her lips parted. Nothing came out. A faint laugh escaped from someone across the floor, instantly stifled. Her ears burned. She turned slowly, trying to find her voice. It was an accident," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to send it to you." He didn't blink, didn't frown, didn't smile either. Just looked at her. "I see," he said. Then without another word, Damian turned and walked back across the office. Calm, silent, powerful. The boardroom door closed behind him with a soft but final click. She didn't breathe until he was gone. Her cheeks were on fire. Her fingers shook. Around her, the whispers broke out like waves. What did she say to him? Did she just flirt with the CEO? Is she fired already? Her phone buzzed. "Abby, girl, what did you do? This is already on Slack." Lena dropped her forehead into her hand and groaned. This was supposed to be a quiet week. She had told herself, no mistakes, no attention, just do the job, keep your head down, pay your bills, and help your sister with tuition. But now, the most emotionally unreadable man in the company had walked across the entire office and whispered, "Say it again." And the worst part, she wasn't entirely sure she didn't want to. By noon, the message had unofficially gone viral. People pretended not to stare, but she saw it. The barely hidden glances, the hushed side conversations, the smirks. Someone even dropped a pen by her desk just to linger longer. She didn't eat lunch, couldn't. She just sat there with her tea, the porcelain teacup trembling slightly in her grip. A throat cleared beside her. She looked up. Vivian Hale, the CEO's executive liaison, and the woman everyone assumed would become the next Mrs. Rhodes, if only because no one else dared to get that close. Vivian smiled sweetly. Too sweet. Oh, sweetheart, she cooed. That was bold. Her tone dripped sugar and daggers. I didn't mean to, Lena started. Vivian raised a hand. No judgment, really. We've all imagined it, haven't we? She chuckled. But just be careful. Daydreams tend to melt when exposed to this much light. Then she turned on her heels and walked away, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and subtle warning behind. Lena stared at her screen, stunned. She didn't want this, not the whispers, not the stares, not this game. But the moment she tried to forget about it, her inbox chimed. From Damian Rhodes. Subject 4:30 p.m. My office. Come alone. Her heart dropped straight to her knees. She was going to be fired. Quietly, of course. That's how someone like Damian handled things. No drama, no scene, just a gentle tap on the shoulder and a severance envelope. She looked at her teacup. The crack near the rim caught the light. She hadn't realized how often she reached for it until her hand froze this time. 4:30 p.m., she walked to his office like she was marching toward a courtroom. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floor. Her hands were cold. She'd almost taken the teacup with her. It felt like armor somehow. But it stayed on her desk, like a quiet witness to whatever this was about to become. The office door was ajar. She knocked gently. Come in. His voice was calm, steady. Lena stepped inside. Damian stood at the window, his back to her, one hand in his pocket, the other fidgeting with a dark fountain pen. The silence stretched until he turned, and when he looked at her, there wasn't anger in his face. There wasn't even surprise, just one sentence. It wasn't a mistake. She had no idea how she was still standing. Lena closed the door behind her slowly, fingers brushing the cool surface like it might tether her to something solid. Damian Rhodes stood a few feet away, calm as ever, sleeves rolled. Pen in hand, gaze focused entirely on her. It wasn't a mistake. That was the first thing he said after she walked in. Not hello, not take a seat, just that. I don't understand, she said carefully, choosing every word like a step on thin ice. I already told you I meant to send that to someone else. He nodded once. I believe you. Then came the pause. But that doesn't mean it was a mistake. Her breath caught. What was that supposed to mean? I just want to make sure no one misunderstands, she added, hands fidgeting with the hem of her blouse. It was embarrassing enough as it is. They already misunderstood, he said plainly. There's no controlling that now. There it was again, that sharp clarity, like he'd already skipped ahead, 3 steps in a chess game she didn't know she was playing. Lena looked down, wishing she could melt into the floor. Then maybe I should go, let it all cool down. Instead of agreeing, he tilted his head slightly, curious, thoughtful. You're not what I expected when HR hired you, he said. Her eyebrows lifted. Sorry to disappoint. You didn't. Simple, flat. But something in the way he said it made her heart stutter. He looked at her like someone trying to read a half-burned letter, something important, fragile, but mostly hidden. Silence settled between them again. She glanced at the window, unsure whether she was supposed to sit, speak, or just disappear. But he didn't waver away, didn't thank her, didn't even glance back at his screen, which was worse than getting fired, honestly. When she finally returned to her desk, the office looked the same, polished, organized, indifferent. But she wasn't. She reached for her mother's teacup the second she sat down. It had gone cold, but the weight of it felt grounding, like a lighthouse when everything around her felt blurred. A few people peeked over cubicle edges, their curiosity barely hidden. One intern even gave her a shy thumbs up. She nearly spilled the tea. Her phone buzzed again. Abby, he didn't fire you? OMG. Also, he looked at you like a man with a past. What is going on? Lena didn't reply, because she didn't know. All she knew was he hadn't smiled, he hadn't joked, he hadn't flirted. But somehow, she felt more exposed than if he'd done all three. Later that night, Lena stood in her tiny apartment kitchen, staring at the porcelain teacup drying on the dish rack. It looked out of place here. It belonged on her desk, where her composure had to live too, but tonight she needed it close. She poured hot water over chamomile and added honey. 1 spoon this time. Her hands were still a little shaky. Then her phone rang. It was her sister, Clara. Lena, I saw something on Twitter. Something about you and your boss? She groaned. Seriously? That got out? Kind of. One of your interns posted a vague tweet, and it blew up. Something like, she just said, I miss you to the CEO and survived. She's my hero. Oh my God, Clara laughed gently. Is he at least cute? Lena didn't answer right away, because yes, he was. But it wasn't just that. It was the way he looked, the way he carried silence like power. The way his eyes caught hers and didn't let go. But she didn't know how to explain that without sounding completely insane. So she sipped her tea and changed the subject. The next morning, 7:45 a.m. The South Lounge was mostly quiet. Pale sunlight pooled through the windows, casting shadows on polished floors. Lena stepped inside carefully. Damien was already seated near the corner table. No jacket, sleeves rolled again, coffee in hand. A second cup sat beside his. She paused in the doorway. He didn't look up, but he spoke. Close the door. She did. Have a seat. She did that too. He nudged the second cup toward her. Honey, no sugar. That's how you take it, right? She stared at him. How do you know that? He looked at her now, calm and steady. You drink it at exactly 10:04 most mornings. You reheat it once around 2:40. Always the same cup. Always honey, never sugar. She blinked. You watch me? No. He paused. I notice you. The words knocked the breath out of her lungs. For a second, she couldn't look at him, couldn't think. I thought this was about the Carmichael proposal, she managed. It is. And for the next 20 minutes, they talked numbers, timelines, marketing risks. On paper, it was all business. But in the air between them, in the way he leaned forward, the way his voice dropped every time she hesitated, nothing about it felt normal. Once she reached across the table for her notepad and their fingers brushed. She flinched. He didn't. But his jaw tightened, just barely, enough to say he noticed that, too. As she stood to leave, he looked up at her and asked one final question. You still think that message was an accident? She hesitated. Her hand tightened around the strap of her bag. I know it was, she said. He didn't argue, just watched her. And right before she reached the door, he spoke again, calm, almost quiet. Everyone notices you now, Lena. The question is, what are they supposed to see? She didn't answer, because deep down, she wasn't sure. But for the first time since she stepped into this building, she wanted to find out. The elevator was half full, but no one spoke. Lena stood by the buttons, staring at her reflection in the polished metal doors, trying to steady her breathing. Behind her, the murmur of conversations drifted between floors, meaningless chatter that faded in and out like static. But in her head, one sentence repeated like a heartbeat. Everyone notices you now. The question is, what are they supposed to see? She stepped off on the 9th floor. Walked slowly, purposefully, but her legs felt strange, like she was walking through fog. A receptionist smiled at her, too politely. 2 legal assistants paused mid-conversation as she passed. Someone knew. No, everyone knew. At her desk, Her teacup was right where she'd left it, the same one she brought in her bag every morning, tucked in a small cloth wrap, a porcelain teacup with a faded rose and a thin chip near the rim. It didn't match the clean glass mugs of the office. It didn't belong here. But neither did she most days. She reached for it now like it might protect her. The porcelain was cool. She poured hot water into it from the small kettle under her desk. Added honey, no sugar, and stirred quietly. Just the sound of the spoon against the cup soothed her nerves, until her phone buzzed. Abby, tell me why someone just saw you and the CEO having coffee, alone, like outdoor table, like date? Lena sighed, thumb hovering over the keyboard. She typed, "It was about the Carmichael proposal." Abby, "Girl, Carmichael doesn't look at you like that." She didn't reply, because the truth was, she didn't know how he looked at her. The morning crawled by. Vivian passed by her desk again around 11's parlor, holding a folder she absolutely didn't need to deliver herself. She paused, leaned slightly against Lena's desk, and said in a voice like silk dipped in cold water, "Lunch plans today?" Lena blinked. "Not really." Vivian's smile widened. "Just a suggestion. Some things are safer in the cafeteria. Less exposure." Then she walked off, her perfume trailing like a warning. Lena stared at her screen for a full minute after that, the cursor blinking, like it had a secret too. At 11:31, her phone rang. No caller ID. She knew who it was before she answered. "Hello? Lena?" Damien's voice, calm, a little rougher than usual, like he hadn't spoken all morning. "Yes?" "I wanted to ask you something." "In person." A pause. "Are you free during lunch?" "I think so, yes." "There's a cafe 2 blocks down. Ivy on the side. Outdoor tables. Small. No one from our building goes there." He didn't say it out loud, but she understood. Privacy. Discretion. "Okay," she said. "Noon?" "Noon." He hung up. No drawn-out goodbye. No overthinking. Just that. She stared at her phone, her teacup, her reflection in the dark monitor. This wasn't just a work day anymore. 11:59 a.m. The cafe was quiet, the kind of quiet that made people speak softer, slower. Sunlight filtered through creeping ivy, dappling the tables with light and shadow. She spotted him instantly, not in a suit, not in power. Dark jeans, crisp shirt, sleeves casually rolled, no tie, no armor. He stood when he saw her, a subtle courtesy, one that caught her off guard. "Lena," he said, just her name, but it landed differently, soft, like he'd tried it out in his head first. She sat across from him at a small table tucked near the edge of the patio. He gestured to the waiter who approached silently. "Tea?" Damien asked her. "With honey?" She blinked. "Yes." He didn't look smug about it. He just knew. The waiter nodded and disappeared. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," Damien said. She tilted her head. "You're not exactly easy to ignore." His lips twitched slightly. Not a smile, but close. "Good," he said, "because I'm not trying to disappear. I'm just trying to be careful." Lena folded her hands in her lap. "You don't seem like someone who worries about what people say." "I don't," he said. "Not about me." And there it was, the quiet truth between them. She looked down. "I never wanted attention." "You didn't do anything wrong." "Didn't I?" she said quietly. "The second I hit send, everything changed." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, not aggressive, not calculated, just closer. "You sent a message," he said, "a human one. Everyone in that office is starving for connection, but you're the one they noticed. That's not your fault. That's because you're different." Their teas arrived. The cups were plain white, not porcelain, not chipped, but when she wrapped her fingers around hers, something softened. "I know this could affect my reputation," she said. He nodded. "And I know what it could do to mine." "Then why are we here?" she asked. "Why did you even ask me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, He stirred his tea once, twice, then met her gaze fully. "Because I haven't stopped thinking about it." She felt her breath falter. "About the message?" "About how it felt to read it," he said. Lena's heart stumbled inside her chest. "You knew it wasn't for you," she whispered. He nodded. "But I wanted it to be." The cafe seemed quieter than ever. Lena couldn't tell if the birds had stopped singing or if her pulse was too loud in her ears to hear anything else. "I know this is complicated," he said gently. "I know people will talk. I know Vivienne already has." Lena looked up at that. "You heard?" He nodded again. "She doesn't speak for me," he said. "She never has." A breeze passed between them, tugging a loose strand of hair across her cheek. She tucked it behind her ear. Her hand trembling just slightly. She looked at him. Really looked. No suit, no office walls, no title, just a man sitting across from her, and something in his eyes, something quieter than desire, stronger than interest, held her there. She set her cup down. "Then why not walk away?" she asked softly. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. He just said the one thing she hadn't expected. "I tried." Lena hadn't touched her tea in 5 minutes. She just stared at it. The steam was fading, curling lazily in the autumn air. The honey barely stirred. Across from her, Damien watched with that quiet focus, like he wasn't just seeing her, but scanning for something behind her silence. "I tried." That was what he'd said. She wasn't sure which part of her felt it more, her heart or the part of her that had always been so careful, so trained not to want anything at work, especially not this. "I don't know what to do with that," she finally said. He leaned back slightly, but his eyes didn't waver. "You don't have to do anything, Lena. I'm not asking for a response." "Then why tell me?" she asked, fingers gently curled around the base of the teacup. It wasn't the one from her desk, but she kept imagining it, the chipped rose, the weight of it in her palm. "Because the air shifted," he said plainly, and pretending it didn't would be dishonest. A silence fell between them again, not heavy, just uncertain. They both glanced up when the waiter returned to check on them. Neither had ordered food yet. "I'll have the soup," Lena said quickly, just to break the quiet. "And sourdough, if you have it." Damien looked at her, almost amused, then turned to the waiter. "Same." Once they were alone again, he asked, "Do you always order based on instinct?" She smiled faintly. "Only when I'm nervous." He didn't tease her for it. He just said, "You hide it well." Lena let out a quiet laugh. "That's the only reason I'm still employed." A pause, then, unexpectedly, he laughed too. Not loud, not forced, but genuine enough to make her shoulders loosen just a bit. And for a moment, they weren't the CEO and the assistant. They were just two people at a small corner table, trying to speak without ruining something neither of them had asked for. Their soup arrived. The steam rose between them, mingling with the silence. Lena dipped her spoon and took a slow, careful sip. It was warm, earthy, comforting in a way she didn't realize she needed. Damien buttered a piece of sourdough and set it on the edge of her plate. She blinked. "I can do that," she said quietly. "I know." But he still did it anyway, small, thoughtful, no performance, just kind. She tore the bread in half, passing a piece back to him in return. Something shifted again. She didn't mean to ask it, but the words came out before she could stop them. "Is this something you've done before?" He looked up. "What?" "This, lunch, with someone like me." His brow furrowed. "You mean someone who doesn't come from the same world?" "I mean someone without a last name on the building," she said softly. He was quiet for a beat. Then, "No, I haven't." "And is that a rule you're breaking?" "Maybe," he said, "but not one I regret." Her heart moved in her chest like a startled bird. By the time the soup bowls were nearly empty, she could feel herself relaxing in inches, like thawing slowly in warm sun. He reached for his water. "I looked up your resume again last night," he said. Her eyebrows lifted. Why? I wanted to know where you came from. Lena tilted her head. Did you expect to find something? Not what I did, he said. You studied literature, wrote papers on classic fairy tales, then pivoted to admin and finance. She gave a half smile. Fairy tales don't pay rent. No, he said. But you don't seem like someone who gives up magic easily. That made her pause. How do you know I haven't? She asked, voice quieter now. Because you still bring a chipped teacup to work. Her breath caught. I noticed it the first week, he added. That cup says something. What does it say? That even in a place like ours, you still believe in softness. Lena didn't know what to say. No one had ever seen her like that. Not ever. They sat there a while longer. No more questions, no more confessions, just quiet. The kind of quiet that felt like both a promise and a warning. When they finally stood to leave, he waited until she was beside him. I meant what I said, he told her, adjusting the cuff of his sleeve. You don't have to say anything. I know what this means, what it risks. I haven't decided yet, she admitted. I can wait. Then, before he stepped away, he looked at her one last time, and, for what it's worth, I don't care what they say. Lena walked back to the office alone. The city buzzed around her, the crosswalks blinking, the horns honking, but everything felt oddly muted. She didn't know how long she'd been holding her breath until she stepped back into the elevator and felt her chest rise. It was quiet inside. She checked her reflection in the mirrored wall. There was a flush in her cheeks, a softness in her mouth she didn't recognize, and the strangest part? She didn't feel ashamed of it. 1:14 p.m. Lena had barely sat down at her desk when her phone rang. Extension 200, HR department. Her stomach dropped. She picked up slowly. Lena Hart. Hi, Lena. This is Marissa in HR. Could you come up to the 12th floor conference room? We'd like to discuss something. Her fingers tightened around the receiver. Now? Yes, if you're available. She hesitated. Is something wrong? There was a beat. Then, Vivian Hale is already here. We'll explain once you arrive. The line went dead. The 12th floor conference room was cold, not in temperature, but in atmosphere. The kind of cold that settled in your chest, made your palms damp, your spine tighten. Lena stepped inside quietly, the door clicking shut behind her. The room had no windows, just a long glass table, chrome chairs, a muted rug in a gray shade that matched the walls. Everything looked expensive and unfriendly. Vivian Hale sat at the far end, legs crossed, fingers poised lightly on a closed folder. Not a hair out of place. Not a single expression betraying what this was about. Marissa from HR smiled in that polite, vague way HR people did when they were about to say something unpleasant. Thank you for coming, Lena, she said. Please, have a seat. Lena's fingers curled inward as she sat. She didn't ask questions. Not yet. Vivian waited 3 full seconds before speaking. We wanted to have a little conversation about boundaries. Lena's throat went dry. Of course, Marissa added quickly. This is just a casual discussion. No accusations. No disciplinary measures. Just a professional check-in. About? Lena asked, keeping her voice level. Vivian opened the folder in front of her, slowly, like it was a legal drama, and she wanted to drag the scene out. There's been some conversation, she said, whispers, observations, uncomfortable perceptions. Lena said nothing. Of course, Vivian went on. We understand you've been involved in several proposal meetings lately, some private ones. One this morning, off-site. Marissa jumped in with a helpful nod. Technically, those aren't against company policy, but we do like to be aware of meetings that fall outside the typical work setting. Lena's heart thudded in her chest. This wasn't about rules. This was about reputation. Vivian smiled, faint, controlled. We just want to make sure you're not misunderstood. I see, Lena said softly. But inside, something shifted. A small, fierce part of her rose up, the same part that had kept her going when her father passed. when her mom's illness left them with bills and no cushion, the part that worked 2 jobs and still brought her little sister tea at night. She folded her hands neatly on the table. "I appreciate the concern," she said, "but I don't believe I've broken any company policies." "You haven't," Marissa agreed. "But," Vivian didn't let her finish. "But you've certainly noticed." Lena let that sit in the air, let Vivian believe she was in control of the silence, but instead of shrinking, she leaned in slightly. "Then maybe the question isn't about me," she said. "Maybe the question is why being noticed by a man in power is only ever a problem for the woman." Marissa blinked. Vivian's smile tightened just a little. "I'm not accusing anyone," Lena continued, "but if we're going to talk about perception, then let's talk about all of it, including who benefits when other women are silenced." For the first time, Vivian's eyes flashed, not with anger, with something more dangerous, warning. She looked like she wanted to speak, but the sound of the door opening interrupted her. Damian Rhodes stepped into the room. The entire atmosphere shifted like someone had opened a window. Even the rug seemed quieter. He wasn't in a suit today, just slacks, a dark shirt, no tie. But he walked in like he still owned the ground beneath his feet. Vivian turned to him smoothly, as if expecting him. "Damian," she said, "we were just—" "I know," he said. Calm, direct. And then he did something that made every molecule in Lena's body freeze. He didn't sit beside Vivian. He pulled out a chair beside Lena and sat down. Silence, not the awkward kind, the powerful kind, where one move says more than 5 conversations. Vivian shifted slightly. "This is an internal HR concern. I wasn't aware you were planning to join us." "I wasn't," he said, "until I heard." "Heard what?" Marissa asked, voice hesitant. "That someone is trying to speak for me," Damian said, his eyes still on Vivian. Vivian blinked once. "I was simply protecting the integrity of the company." He looked at her. Then at Marissa. "If that's true, then let me speak clearly, so no one else has to guess at my intentions." Lena didn't breathe. He looked directly at her, then at both women across the table. "I've worked with hundreds of people in this company," he said. "Few have shown the level of professionalism, restraint, and insight that Ms. Hart has, including under pressure." Marissa nodded quickly. "That's good to know." "I've asked her to assist with projects because she's qualified," he added, "and any personal assumptions being made about what that means are not based on her behavior." Vivian folded her hands. "Damian, I don't think—" "I'm not asking what you think," he said. Not cruel, not cold, just final. Lena felt her throat tighten, not because she needed saving, but because for the first time someone had chosen not to let her stand alone, and that mattered. More than she could say. Marissa cleared her throat gently. "Thank you both for the clarification. This has been helpful." Vivian didn't move, but her fingers curled ever so slightly around the edge of her folder. Damian stood. Lena followed, unsure whether her legs would carry her. As they walked toward the door, he held it open for her, not as a power move, not as a performance, just out of habit, just for her. And as they stepped out into the hallway, leaving the frost of the room behind, he said quietly, "I wasn't going to let anyone define you for me." The door shut behind them with a soft, final click. Lena didn't speak, not in the hallway, not in the elevator, not even as the soft chime announced the 9th floor. Her hands were still cold, her shoulders tight from trying not to show any emotion during the entire meeting. Damian walked a step ahead of her, silent but steady, as if letting her choose what happened next. As they neared her desk, she opened her mouth to say, "Thank you." But before she could find the right words, he turned toward her and said quietly, "If anything like that happens again, I expect you to tell me." His voice wasn't sharp, just firm, like a locked door behind her, one she didn't have to hold shut by herself anymore. She nodded slowly. "I didn't want to pull you into it." "You didn't," he said. "They did." A pause, then. "Vivienne won't try that again?" Lena wasn't so sure. Vivienne was too polished to swing and miss without planning the next strike. Still, she found herself exhaling, long, slow, like she'd been holding something in all morning. He glanced at her desk. "Are you okay to continue the day?" She gave a soft smile. "Yes? You sure?" She nodded. "I've survived worse." Something flickered in his expression, something like respect, mixed with something gentler. And just before he turned to leave, he said one more thing. "It's not weakness to be seen, Lena. You don't have to hide to be safe." When he was gone, she finally sat down. Her knees didn't give out, but they considered it. She wrapped her hands around her porcelain teacup, the one with the tiny rose and the chip in the rim. It was still warm from this morning, and holding it felt like regaining her balance. For a few moments she just sat there, breathing, quiet, watching the honey swirl. She didn't cry, she didn't let herself. But the tightness in her throat pulsed like something unspoken had finally cracked open. No one had ever stood up for her like that in a professional room. Not her first manager, not her former mentor, who only liked her when she stayed invisible. Certainly not anyone with authority. But Damien had. Around 3:00, Abby passed by her desk, dramatically raising an eyebrow. "I heard HR was spicy today," she whispered, slipping a Post-it onto Lena's monitor like it was a covert file drop. Lena glanced at it. It was a doodle of a dragon in heels breathing fire at a tiny teacup. She laughed softly, the first real laugh of the day. Abby winked and walked away. Lena shook her head and reached for her tea again. But when she picked it up, she noticed something odd. There was a small folded note tucked under the edge of her keyboard. Clean cream-colored paper, no name, no envelope. She unfolded it. There were only 4 words. "You held your ground." No signature, not typed, handwritten, in neat, familiar script, not his, but definitely not random. She stared at it for a long moment, her thumb brushing over the paper like it might change. And just as she looked up across the office, Vivienne was watching her. The look was unreadable, polished, calm, but it wasn't kind. Lena set the note down gently and turned back to her monitor. If it was meant to shake her, it didn't. If anything, it centered her, because maybe she wasn't someone to be whispered about anymore. Maybe she was someone to watch. At 4:15, her inbox chimed with a calendar invite from Damian Rhodes. Subject, Carmichael Briefing Prep Time. Tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. Location, CEO office note. There will be tea. She stared at it and smiled, not because of the meeting, because of the note, because he remembered, because somehow, despite everything, it felt okay to look forward to something again. When she left the office that day, she didn't rush. She walked slowly, letting the crisp autumn air find her skin, her breath. She passed the cafe where they'd sat just the day before and noticed a couple laughing over a shared muffin. She smiled softly, then kept walking. She didn't check her phone. She didn't rehearse what she might say tomorrow. She didn't even replay the HR meeting in her mind. She just thought of one thing. It's not weakness to be seen. When she left the office that day, she didn't rush. She walked slowly, letting the crisp autumn air find her skin, her breath. She passed the cafe where they'd sat just the day before and noticed a couple laughing over a shared muffin. She smiled softly, then kept walking. Back at home, Lena dropped her bag by the door and froze for a second, feeling the silence wrap around her. For the first time, it didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like space. On her phone, she pulled up the photo of her desk, the one Abby had sent as a joke. With the tiny porcelain teacup front and center, her chipped little anchor, still waiting for her in the morning. Then she picked up the folded note from her bag and pinned it to the small corkboard above her desk, next to a faded photo of her mother holding that same cup. You held your ground. And for the first time in a long time, She believed it. The next morning, 7:27 a.m. Lena stood outside the CEO's door with her tablet in hand and her nerves a little more awake than usual. She knocked once, then twice. "Come in." His voice low and clear. She stepped inside. He was at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled again. A familiar rhythm now. But something was different. There were 2 mugs on the table near the window, and her teacup. Her teacup. Clean, warm, sitting on a linen napkin beside a jar of honey. Her actual cup, not an imitation. Her breath caught. "Is that—" "I had someone bring it down last night," Damien said, finally looking up. "I thought maybe you'd want to start today with something that belongs to you." For a full 3 seconds, Lena just stood there, still holding her tablet, still in the doorway, still unsure whether her legs would move forward or backward. Her teacup, the real one, the one with the chip on the rim and the faded rose on the side, was sitting beside a jar of golden honey in the center of Damien Rhodes' desk. It shouldn't be here, and yet here it was. "I hope that's okay," he said, watching her carefully. "I didn't want it to get left behind yesterday." Lena stepped inside slowly, closing the door behind her. "You had someone bring it down?" He gave a small nod. "I told them to wrap it carefully. I've seen the way you hold it." She blinked. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Like it mattered. Like it was fragile and valuable. Like it was her. She sat across from him, trying to calm her racing thoughts. On the table was a printed copy of the Carmichael briefing. A second mug sat beside her cup, sleek and black, still steaming. "Figured we could keep it simple this morning," Damien said, handing her a spoon. "Just tea and work." She smiled softly. "That's the best combination I've had all week." He poured hot water into her teacup without asking, then slid the honey jar toward her. She stirred slowly, trying to focus, but her fingers trembled, just enough for him to notice. "You don't have to be nervous with me," he said. She looked up. "I'm not nervous." He raised one brow, not accusingly, but with quiet amusement. She gave a tiny shrug. "I'm adjusting." "Fair," he said. "So am I." That part made her pause. "You don't seem like someone who adjusts to people easily." "I'm not," he said. "Until now." The room was quiet except for the sound of tea being stirred and the occasional rustle of papers. But the air wasn't tense. It was soft, full, like a room that remembered what it felt like to be safe. She watched him read a page of the proposal, the way his eyes tracked each line, the way his fingers tapped once when something needed changing. He looked calm, focused, but there was something under the surface, something restless. She sipped her tea and asked, "Can I ask you something?" He didn't look up. "Always." "Do you regret hiring me?" That made him pause. He set the page down and finally met her gaze. "No," he said. "I regret how long it took me to notice you." She tried to smile, but her lips pressed into a line instead. "You're not saying these things to fix anything, are you?" "No." "Or to make me stay quiet?" He leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on the desk. "Well, Lena, if I wanted silence, I would have never brought your voice into the room." She held his gaze, and for once she didn't feel like she had to shrink under it. She didn't blush, didn't look away. She just breathed, and the world didn't fall apart. By 8:15 they were laughing over the terrible formatting of a slide deck Damien had reviewed the night before. "You'd think a global client could afford a better designer," he muttered, shaking his head. "I can fix the layout if you want," Lena offered. "I used to do social content on the side in college." "You," he said, tapping the table with his pen, "are a terrifyingly efficient person." "Terrifying?" He smiled. "In the best way." The word hung between them longer than it should have. She busied herself straightening the briefing documents. "So, you're not worried?" "About what?" "People talking." He was quiet for a moment. Let them talk, he said. You really don't care? He met her eyes. I care about what's real. Care, not what's whispered. At 9:03 a.m., Lena returned to her desk, feeling different. Not protected, not flattered. Seen. She set her cup back on its coaster in the way she always did, and turned on her monitor. The day was already moving. Emails, pings, new notes from legal. Abby sent her a private message. Abby, so... Where did the CEO go between 7:30 and 8:30, asking for literally everyone? Lena rolled her eyes and replied, Work meeting. Carmichael, don't start. Abby, fine. But also, you're smiling and I'm telling HR. Lena laughed under her breath. She was still smiling when the ping came in. Group channel, Archer buzzboard. Someone posted a blurry photo of a teacup on his desk, with her sitting across from him. The caption read, Did Lena Hart just domesticate the CEO? Her breath caught. Abby sent a string of panicked emojis. Then her phone lit up with a call. Extension 307, Corporate Communications. Her heart plummeted. The phone kept ringing. Extension 307, Corporate Communications. The display blinked like it had teeth. Lena didn't want to answer, not because she was afraid of what they'd say, but because she already knew what it would be. She reached for the receiver anyway, setting her shoulders back. Lena Hart speaking. The voice on the other end was bright and breezy, too much so. Hi, Lena. This is Jill from Comms. Sorry to call directly. Quick heads up. Lena stayed silent. There's a little chatter on Slack about a photo. You and Mr. Rhodes at his desk this morning. You know how these things go. Someone saw, someone posted. You're trending. Internally. She didn't laugh. Jill continued. We're keeping it contained. Best advice? If anyone brings it up, just say it was a quick project sync. Carmichael, prep. Totally normal, totally boring. Lena finally spoke. And if they ask why my teacup was in the frame? Oh. Just say it's your favorite cup. Adds personality, makes you relatable. You know, softens your image. She blinked. I didn't know my image needed softening. There was a pause. Well, you know how perception works. Just keep things neutral, keep it professional, keep it small. Click. That was it. No concern, no protection, just a PR strategy. Lena set the phone down slowly and looked at her monitor, her reflection faint in the black screen. Her cheeks were flushed. Not from embarrassment, but from heat rising beneath her skin. Her eyes flicked to the photo someone had messaged her. It was blurry. It cropped, probably taken from across the floor through the edge of a glass wall, but still, it was unmistakable. Damien sitting at his desk, her across from him, and her teacup, the chipped porcelain one, front and center. What once felt like comfort now felt like evidence. She took her teacup in both hands, staring into the honey-colored tea. Her mother had used that cup during chemo, during late nights, when nothing would stay down except warm water and honey. It was sacred, personal, and now it had been dragged into gossip. A meme. She swallowed. She left her desk around 2:15, not for the restroom, not even to escape, just to walk, to remember she had legs, a body, a self that existed beyond other people's opinions. As she passed the hallway near the glass conference rooms, someone called her name. Hey, Hart? She turned, expecting judgment, but instead she found Maya Kim, poised, sleek, sipping coffee from a matte black tumbler. Lena barely knew her. They'd shared maybe 3 words in the last 6 months. You all right? Maya asked, blunt but not unkind. Lena blinked. Excuse me? I saw the post. People are loud this week. I'm fine, Lena said automatically. Maya gave her a look. Not sarcastic, not skeptical, just deeply female, the kind of look that said, I've stood in this fire before. You don't look fine. You look like someone's trying really hard not to crack. Lena didn't respond. Maya sipped her coffee and stepped a little closer. You know, the second I saw that photo, I didn't think... Scandal. I thought, wow. He made tea for her. Lena's breath hitched. Maya continued, I don't know what's going on between you two, and it's none of my business. But I do know this. They only come after women who change the story. Lena looked at her finally. What story? The one where power is only acceptable when it looks a certain way. When it's cold, male, controlled. She didn't know what to say, so Maya saved her the trouble. She gave her a nod. You're not the problem, Lena, but that won't stop them from trying to make you think you are. Then she walked away. Back at her desk, Lena had a new message waiting. Abby. Memo leaked. Check your inbox, now. Lena opened the file. Her stomach dropped. Private internal memo. For executive and HR review. Subject personal conduct and executive scheduling oversight, effective immediately. All non-departmental meetings involving senior executives and junior administrative staff must be pre-approved and recorded in the official scheduling system. Any early morning sessions, off-hour meetings, or unscheduled private discussions will be reviewed for procedural compliance. Failure to comply may result in disciplinary action. Names previously cited in time reports. Rhodes, D. Hart, L. Lena's name, her name, alone, visible, branded next to his like a co-defendant. She stared at it for a long time. The words were clean, sterile, but underneath the ink the message was clear. You're not untouchable. Her heart beat loud in her ears. Her hands felt cold. Lena, Abby whispered, suddenly at her side. This is personal. They've never published a name like that before. Let alone both? I didn't do anything wrong, Lena whispered. I know you didn't, Abby said, but someone's trying to send a message, and I don't think it's just about you. At 3:42 p.m. the office stilled. The energy changed, not with sound, but with absence, because the elevator door opened and Damian Rhodes stepped out. But not alone. 2 board members flanked him, calm, composed, and too quiet. He wasn't wearing his jacket. His sleeves were rolled, his face unreadable. Every screen stopped moving. Lena stood up halfway, just instinct. Her eyes met his for exactly 1 second. That was all it took. He looked at her. Not with regret, not with apology, with a kind of silent reassurance that gripped her chest. Then he disappeared into the executive hallway and didn't come back. At 4:06, her inbox pinged. 1 message, no subject, no body text, just a sender, Dr. Hoda's private, and a single line in the preview. Trust the silence. She didn't drink her tea that day, not because it was cold, not because she forgot, because when she lifted the porcelain teacup to her lips, the scent of honey, once calming, once sacred, now turned her stomach. So she set it down and pushed it gently to the corner of her desk. The place where quiet things go to grieve. The office was quieter than usual. Emails still came in, phones still rang, conversation still happened. But everything had a different weight now, like someone had draped the entire floor in an invisible fog. The CEO was gone, not officially, not permanently, but visibly. And in a place like this, visibility was everything. Lena kept her eyes on her screen for hours, even when her vision blurred. She answered every email within 5 minutes. She updated reports no one had requested. She double-checked slides that didn't need checking. She stayed moving. Because movement was the only way to silence the question screaming at the back of her mind. What if I'm next? At 10:47 a.m., her sister texted, Clara, I saw something on LinkedIn. They pulled Damian from today's panel. Is everything okay? Lena, he's fine. It's internal. Clara, internal usually means awful. Lena didn't respond. Because Clara was right. By noon, she still hadn't eaten. Not because she didn't have time, but because she couldn't stomach the idea of sharing space in the break room with people whispering about her. When Abby approached with a protein bar and a plastic bottle of juice, Lena blinked back unexpected tears. Abby didn't ask questions. She just set the items down and said quietly, "You have to eat, babe. Even queens need fuel." Lena gave a tired smile. "I'm not a queen." "Then why is everyone acting like you're the one with the crown?" At 1:05 p.m., an official email went out from the board. Subject: Leadership Restructuring and Transition. The message was full of elegant phrasing and vague optimism. Temporary step back. Strategic review of operations. Continued respect for Mr. Rhodes's contributions. Lena didn't read the second paragraph because her name wasn't mentioned, which somehow made it worse. She wasn't being punished. Not openly, not yet, but she was also no longer attached to anything. Not Carmichael, not executive scheduling, not even her usual morning briefings. Her calendar had gone silent, like someone had pulled the thread of her name out of the system. At 2:30 she slipped into the restroom and splashed cold water on her face. When she looked up, her reflection startled her. Not because she looked tired, but because she looked calm. Too calm, like someone who had expected this moment all along. She stared at herself, at the woman who used to apologize when someone interrupted her, who stayed late without being asked, who kept her voice soft so no one would mistake her confidence for ambition. That version of herself was still there, but fading. She returned to her desk to find a plain envelope resting on her keyboard. No name, no markings. Her stomach twisted. She glanced around, no one watching. No sign of who left it. With hesitant fingers, she opened it. Inside, a single sheet of smooth, thick paper. A handwritten note. "Do not answer to the story they're writing. Write your own, V." Lena stared at the initial, V. Vivian. That didn't make sense. It couldn't be, could it? It wasn't Damien's handwriting. It wasn't Abby's. And yet, the handwriting looked oddly familiar, clean, sharp, elegant. She folded the paper slowly, fingers trembling. Was it a warning? A threat? Or something else entirely? By late afternoon, she was no longer checking the clock. The day had moved past time, into some strange, suspended place where things kept happening, but nothing felt real. She had just begun typing an internal summary for a logistics report when a notification appeared in the bottom corner of her screen. Private message. Unknown sender. She clicked on it, cautiously. One message, just one line. "I left something for you. If you want it, come find it." No name, no signature, but the style, the punctuation. It was him. Damien. Her heartbeat stumbled. She stared at the screen. He wasn't allowed to message her through internal systems anymore. This had to be routed from a private network. Someone had created a back door. Lena looked around. No one seemed to notice. She read it again. "I left something for you." Left it where? What did he mean? What if this was her line? The moment she had to choose, stay inside the story they were writing about her, or follow the one her heart had started before it made sense to. She stood up, just slightly, and just for a second, she caught her own reflection in the dark surface of her screen. Still calm, still upright, but this time not waiting to be saved. The elevator hummed softly as it rose to the 12th floor, each level passing like the beat of a restrained heart. Lena stood alone, her badge clutched between two fingers, the silence pressing in around her like a held breath. The top floor was supposed to be locked down, after the internal memo, after the panel withdrawal, after the way the board had swept Damien Rhodes from visibility like brushing dust off glass. She hadn't expected her badge to work, but when the green light blinked and the door opened, she stepped inside anyway. The executive floor was quiet. Too quiet. The lights were dimmed, the polished floor untouched, like no one had dared walk through since he had left. His door, that imposing glass door with the frosted corners and dark walnut frame, stood slightly ajar. She hesitated only once, then pushed it open. The office looked the same, still, ordered, spacious, but without him inside it, the room felt stripped of its energy, like a stage after the curtain drops. No tie left on the chair, no scattered notes on the desk, no half-finished espresso, just silence. And something in the center of the desk, a black box, rectangular, matte, closed with a dark satin ribbon tied in a careful knot. Her name wasn't written on it. There was no label. But she knew it was for her. No one else would understand. With slow fingers, Lena undid the ribbon. It slipped away like silk from her wrist. She lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in white linen, was a porcelain teacup, identical to hers. The same curved lip, delicate handle, and soft rose painted along the side. But this one was unbroken, no chip, no crack. Perfect. Resting beneath it, a single folded letter, the weight of the paper expensive but not showy. Her name wasn't on that either, but the writing. She recognized instantly, neat, slightly slanted, confident but restrained. Damien. She unfolded it slowly, smoothing the creases with careful hands. Then read, "Lena, when I first noticed your teacup, I didn't know why it stayed in my mind. I thought it was simply beautiful. Out of place, quietly defiant. But the truth is, it wasn't the cup. It was how you held it, the way your hands wrapped around it like it anchored you, the way you placed it down with care, never rushed. The way you looked at it when you were thinking. It told me everything I didn't yet know about you. That you came from somewhere with softness, that you'd lost something worth remembering, and that, even here, in a place built on hard edges, you were still protecting that piece of yourself." Her breath caught. She stopped reading for a moment, blinking the burn from her eyes. "You never asked to be seen. But I saw you. Long before the message, long before the world noticed. I noticed. I watched how you moved through this place. Kind, careful, measured. I watched how you listened more than you spoke, how you brought calm where there was noise, how you gave and gave without asking to be held in return. And I hated that I was part of a system that taught you that survival required silence. You deserved better. Still do." Her fingers tightened slightly around the paper. She felt every word like a whisper along her skin. "I didn't leave because I was ashamed. I left because I knew the story was starting to swallow you. And I would rather step back into shadow than let you burn under a spotlight you never asked for. This cup isn't meant to replace the one you carry. It's just a reminder that you were never the chipped thing. You were always the whole." Her vision blurred. She reached for the cup again, touched the smooth edge, and placed it beside the letter. Two halves of a single truth. What the world saw, and what she knew about herself. "I don't expect anything from you, not loyalty, not forgiveness, not even memory. But there's one thing I still think about. That day in the office, the moment that started all of this. The moment you looked up from your desk, flushed and afraid, and I asked you, 'Say it again.' You never did, and you didn't have to. But if someday, in your own time, in your own way, I'd still like to hear it, just once, without fear, because you want to say it, not because you need to." Lena read the letter twice. Then a third time. She didn't cry, not fully, but something in her chest broke open, not from pain, but from release. It was the first time in a long time someone had said exactly what she needed to hear, and asked for nothing in return. She sat in the chair he used to command rooms from, now quiet, and held the cup in her hands. It felt familiar and foreign all at once. She thought of her own chipped cup, the one still waiting on her desk, still brave in its imperfection. Maybe they weren't opposites. Maybe they were a pair. She tucked the letter back into the box, placed the cup beside it, and closed the lid slowly. Then her phone buzzed. Once, a private notification. From Dr. Hoda's private subject, just one question, Message, "Do you miss me?" Lena stared at the screen. The same phrase she'd accidentally sent, the message that had started everything. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard, heart racing. But this time, she didn't feel like she was falling. She felt like she had a choice. The message stayed on her screen all night. "Do you miss me?" No punctuation, no signature, no expectations. It was almost cruel, how simple it was, after everything they'd been through, after public whispers and private silences, after HR memos and vanished meetings, after teacups and truths and the day he walked away. Now, here it was, the question that started it all. This time, it was hers to answer, not by accident, not from fear, but because she wanted to. That night, Lena sat on her tiny couch with both cups in front of her. The chipped one, hers, the whole one, his gift. She poured hot water into both, a spoon of honey in each, equal, simple, side by side, just like them, if the world had allowed it. She sipped from her own, still warm, still sharp on the rim, still comfort, and in the stillness of that moment she whispered, out loud, to no one, and yet to everything, "Yes, I miss you." She didn't send the message right away. She slept, dreamlessly, peacefully. In the morning she got up, dressed like she had somewhere to go, put on soft gray slacks and her favorite blouse, left both teacups wrapped in cloth in her bag. Then she walked, not to the office, to a small cafe, tucked off a side street near a bookstore with ivy on the bricks and tables that didn't match. A place where time slowed down, and things could begin again if you let them. Damien was already there, not in a suit, not in shadows, just a dark navy sweater, sleeves pushed to the forearms like he wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. When he saw her, he stood, not rushed, not eager, just present. She said nothing as she sat down across from him. The server came and went. 2 teas arrived. He didn't speak first. He waited, and Lena realized he always had. Even when it didn't look like it, he let her fill the silence. She reached into her bag and gently placed the box on the table, then pulled out the chipped teacup, then the whole one. His eyebrows lifted, not in surprise, in recognition. He looked at her. "Which one did you drink from?" she smiled. Softly, "Both." He nodded once. "That sounds like you." A quiet passed between them again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said when the world was watching. "I got your letter," she said. "I know. And your message." He waited. "I miss you," she said again. "Not because it's easy, or because it's romantic. I miss you because you saw me, and I didn't realize how rare that was until you stopped being in the room." His shoulders shifted just slightly. "And I know you didn't leave me," she continued. "You stepped back. For me. Not for me." His throat moved. A breath, a swallow, a 1,000 held words. "And you still don't owe me anything," she added. "But if you're asking whether there's still something here..." She reached forward and gently touched the handle of the whole teacup. "Then yes, there is." He leaned forward, resting his arms on the table, not claiming, just grounded. "I don't know what comes next," he said. "You don't have to," she replied. "For once, we don't need to outthink the ending." "Do you want this?" he asked, not softly, but carefully. "I want peace," she said, "and I want to feel safe where I'm seen." "You do," he said immediately. "With me," she nodded. "Then we'll build it there." They sat for another hour. No planning, no strategy, just 2 people relearning the shape of each other's presence. When they left, they walked side by side, not hand in hand, not hiding, not performing, just walking, in rhythm. Weeks passed, the office adjusted. Vivian was offered a regional post in another city. A new CEO was announced, a name pulled from a safe shortlist, no risk, no controversy, no history with a chipped cup and a missed message. And Lena? She wasn't demoted. She wasn't promoted, she was invited to a newly formed strategy board focused on employee equity. Not for show, but for change. Damien never suggested it. He didn't have to. She'd already earned her seat. One afternoon, as she packed up to leave, Abby stopped by her desk. "You never told me what you said to him." Lena glanced up. "When?" "That day, when he walked across the office, when he asked you to say it again." "Oh, what did you say back?" Lena smiled. "I didn't," she said. Abby raised an eyebrow. "And now?" Lena touched the rim of her cup, the chipped one, still her favorite. "I said it when I was ready." Sometimes the most powerful love story is the one where no one rushes, where two people make room for each other's silence and still choose to return, whole, not waiting to be rescued. The end. If you made it this far, I want to know, would you have followed the message? Would you have waited or said it first? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if this story moved you, let me know your rating from 0 to 10. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Until next time, I'll be waiting with the kettle on. See you in the next story.